Now we'll turn to our final discussion item for today. And with this discussion item, the Regents open a dialogue on the issue of intolerance. This issue has drawn a lot of press and a lot of comment, and we hope today to start a meaningful dialogue on the university's statement of principles of intolerance.
Thank you very much, Chair Island, and I'm pleased to introduce for the Regents' discussion a draft statement of principles against intolerance. In light of several very serious incidents of antisemitism, racism, and other acts of intolerance on UC's campuses, there has been interest from many quarters, both internal and external to the university, in having in place a university statement of principles reflecting our condemnation of acts of intolerance, a statement that could also reflect our aspirations for inclusive and tolerant environments. Our stakeholders are right that the university lacks a unifying statement that speaks to the seriousness of intolerance and our abhorrence of intolerance.
I got to this late, okay? And I got to this when I'd heard about what was going on and was in support of it. And then when I actually read the item, I thought, what is this? It talks about intolerance and discrimination. I got to this thought to myself, there's been an outgrowth of feeling from the Jewish community about anti-Semitism. I'm not going to debate the Israeli-Palestinian issue. I think that there are plenty of things that could be said about that, but this isn't the proper forum to do it. But I do think to not recognize why this subject is even being brought up is to do a disservice to those who brought it up in the first place. I think that the Jewish community has a right to bring up things that concern the Jewish community, because every individual community is responsible for bringing up the things that concern them about issues that take place anywhere, including the University of California.
Well, thank you. I think Regent Pattiz made the points that I was going to discuss. I think really the reason this whole subject is in front of us is a result of specific issues, and this statement doesn't deal with them. And I think around this board and this table, we have the ability to deal with a specific issue and go forward with it. And it really concerns me that it's a nice statement, but it really just states what we're already about, what we're already doing.
Stating we support and are passionate about supporting the right, especially with academic freedom in an institute like UC, to express your points of view, regardless of whatever those political points of view are, regardless if it agrees with any one of us. But we equally feel it's important to make sure that every one of our students, whatever their race, religion, sexual orientation, or origin are, do not feel intimidated against based on that identity. When we hear lines of students coming forth and giving us examples of swastikas on Jewish fraternities, on challenging a Jewish student at UCLA's qualifications to serve on a council just as a result of her religious identity, of statements that Hitler was right, I hope that I'm not the only one feeling chilled about that and feeling the need for us as leaders of UC to make a statement and tell those students we hear you and that is not acceptable. I agree with Norm. Please save that, because this is about being fair and equal. And we know that there's been a raging political debate by students on campuses over Palestinian-Israel issue, the boycott and divestment of Israel. And when we are passionately supporting the ability to free speech over passionate, divisive political issues, sometimes that leads to individual acts of intimidation and hate that are not acceptable. And when that happens, it is very important for us to tell the students to whom that is happening that we hear you and it is not acceptable. If a political debate was raging on campuses that led to me sitting here and listening to students that are Muslims coming forth and saying hate and intimidation acts against them, gay students coming forth and telling us of hates and intimidation acts against them, Christian students, any students based on their race, religion, national origin, or sexual orientation, I would feel equally upset, equally chilled, and equally determined as a leader of UC to let that particular student group know we hear you. And this statement doesn't do that.
I saw this statement as an opportunity to address the incessant hatred and bigotry that exists on our campuses that has only worsened in the past year. However, I must say that the process of developing this language was flawed to its core, and I was extremely disappointed with what this statement has devolved to. I repeatedly asked several individuals in the Office of the President to include me in the development of this language since June, but was met with no response. After informally learning that this item was being written, I had to reach out to the appropriate individual twice to schedule a conference call. Finally, on this call, I was asked to share suggestions, so naturally I did. But then I was told it would be too late to revise. However, exactly 3 days later, I received a completely revised version of this item, excluding my single suggestion. As much as I believed in the spirit of what this proposal aimed to do, I could not support it in its current form. It did not do justice to those whom have been victimized for their identities far too long on our campuses.
I think my fellow regents have already expressed pretty clearly that there is more work that needs to be done on this, because the protection of students, and I understand academic freedom, free speech, critical thinking, and the intersection of these three important concepts. And certainly when you think about critical thinking, which is the essence of the education that we hope to provide, this institution is one of the best institutions in the world for educational advancement of our people in California, in the country, and in the world. So I think that we can do much better. We can rise to the opportunity that you spoke of to do a better job and to hit the right point. This is not simple. This is not easy. We all come with misconceptions about who people think we are, whether it is all of the points that you rose in terms of ethnic, I'm a woman, I'm a lesbian, I'm a hillbilly. That is a cultural group that has been misunderstood. So I grew up in a Pentecostal holiness church. Putting all those things together make me really pretty hard to define, and people misconstrue me all the time. And so I think we have an opportunity here to get it right, not just for this institution, not just for the university and all of the fine schools that you all represent, but really to set a tone that is different. The definition of the state, the State Department may not exactly be it either, but finding the right balance, I believe we're up for the task.
Thank you. This is a really troublesome place that I find us in right now. I join others who were bothered by the language that ultimately came before us. To move from a discussion that was specific to instances of anti-Semitism on campus to the statement of intolerance that essentially says nothing. It is bothersome that we've walked so far away. In fact, the language before us, I don't believe, even has the word anti-Semitism in it. Now, I have seen actions on a variety of campuses that, by any reasonable person's definition, are anti-Semitic. And that's what motivated folks to bring this conversation to us. I agree with Speaker Atkins that the State Department definition isn't one that lends itself to an academic environment. It does limit academic discourse by conflating criticism with unacceptable activity. We're smarter than that. We can craft a policy that protects academic freedom and free speech, but that condemns and responds to unacceptable activity. When I visit campuses, I try to spend time with students, and I ask to meet with a variety of students. I'll meet with student of color groups and with veterans groups and with LGBT groups, and I've never had administration push back at me, except for when I ask to meet with Jewish student groups. It's the only time that I've asked to meet with a specific group of students where I was met with resistance and was told that in order to organize a meeting for me with organized group of students of a certain type, that I'd have to balance that with another meeting. Now, I'll meet with any group of students that's organized that wants to have a conversation, so I don't have a problem with the other meeting. I have a problem that this is the only time in which I've received resistance and was asked to meet with somebody else.
Over the weekend, my wife, your senior senator, and I talked about this issue at length. She wants to stay out of the conversation publicly, but if we do not do the right thing, she will engage publicly and is prepared to be critical of this university if we don't have the kind of not only statement but penalties for those who commit what you can call them crimes, call them whatever they want. Students that do the things that have been cited here today probably ought to have either a dismissal or a suspension from school. I don't know how many of you feel strongly that way, but my wife does, and so do I.
We all recognize that more work needs to be done. We have a huge diverse population at this university. We have, as several of you have mentioned, different polarities in how people, where they start from in this conversation. And we want to get it right. We won't get it right in the sense that everyone will agree ultimately with what the university puts down on paper. But I think we should be resolute as a board and as a university about the fundamental nature of tolerance and intolerance.
So today we are announcing the beginning of a consultative, deliberative process that will be led by, and I appreciate very much your willingness to do this, Regent Eddie Island, who will now lead a working group that will consist of students, faculty, chancellor, and regents to be able to take this forward to do the difficult work of hopefully coming back with something that is consistent with the principles that we've heard of both academic freedom and our condemnation of certain acts of intolerance against any group. And many of us around this table have been here long enough to be able to hearken back to instances and circumstances and actions against many of our students on campuses. And it is time for us to put forward a thoughtful and yet descriptive statement of our principles around both rejection of these actions and the actions that we would take, recognizing the need for academic freedom on this campus.
I just wanted to say that I agree with Regent Blum that principles are great, rejection of actions are great, but we need to address the punishment. If you don't have punishment, we're just putting a lot of paper together and we're just stating a lot of stuff on pieces of paper. So I totally agree with Regent Blum.
In addition to punishment for acts, I would hope that this task force would go beyond coming up with a statement and move into something more comprehensive and educational.